So he gave us a free will. When we exercise it in the right way, it's a beautiful thing. When we exercise it in the wrong way, it's a horrible thing. And sometimes we always want to find cause and effect for what happens in the world. I remember after the World Trade Center came crashing to the ground in heaps of rubble, it was such a shocking time. And some people were saying it was a judgment of God on America. And I'm thinking, really? Then why did God judge that particular group and those particular towers? Were they the worst sinners in all America? See, I never took that stance. I never believed that at all. In fact, someone came to Jesus once and brought a story up that was well known back then about a tower that fell in a group of Gentiles, non-believers. And they asked the rhetorical question, or he asked it, were they the worst sinners in Jerusalem? No, I tell you that unless you repent, you will also perish. In other words, Jesus is saying, remember that tower that crashed and all those people died? Yeah, we remember. Were they the worst sinners? Newsflash, unless you repent, you'll perish. Here's what Jesus is saying. Guess what? Bad things happen. And sometimes they're really inexplicable. And sometimes they don't make sense. People die. And Jesus is saying, you better be careful. You might die too. It's only a matter of time. No one is exempt. And tragedy happens. The rain falls on the unjust as well as the just. Christians die in motorcycle crashes. Christians die of cancer. Christians die of heart attacks. Oh no, God heals everyone. No, he doesn't. And sometimes I say, I don't get that at all, Lord. I don't get it at all. But this is part of the overall curse of sin. Now, some of you are saying, this is like the most depressing sermon I've ever heard. But here's the thing. There are things that happen that don't make sense. But having said that, there are times when God will take those circumstances and he'll turn them around and use them for his glory. So let's bring this to a close. Why does God allow suffering? Number one, God will allow suffering and sickness sometimes to get our attention. He'll allow it to get our attention. We might be rebelling against him, and he wants it to stop for our own good. Remember the prophet Jonah, he was running from God. What happened? A storm came and got his attention till he turned his life around. God was saving Jonah from himself. Maybe you've been on a course of sin and you've been going the wrong way, and God let something happen to cause you to have to throw the brakes on. And you didn't like it at the time, but now you look back and you're thankful for it. The psalmist said in Psalm 119:67, before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I have kept your word. God can even use the death of a child. You know, after our son went to be with the Lord, I had a lot of people write me. I still have people write me all the time. When I do a post on my Facebook page about our loss, and you can read on your Facebook page how many people read your post. It's crazy. The last post I put up, something like 765,000 people saw the post. They're reading it, sending it, reading it, sending it. And all that says to me is there's just a lot of hurting people out there. And they just want some truth, and they just want some comfort, and they just want some perspective. And I will read through these posts on my Facebook page. I'm brought to tears. I read story after story that breaks my heart. But at the same time, in the midst of all of this pain, I see these incredible statements being made by Christians I've never met, and I'll probably never meet this side of heaven, who are telling me how God used it, how God changed them, how God brought them through it, or is bringing them through it, or has comforted them. And it blows my mind. I say, man, it's so true. It's so real. It's everywhere. And they write me from all around the world. One lady wrote me, and she said, a person expects to lose a parent, maybe a brother, sister, aunt, or uncle, but never a child. My son would have been 16 years old this year. It's been 15 years since his death. But listen to this. She says, he was the person who brought me to the Lord. Because of his death, I received my salvation. The comfort I found when I fell into God's hands. God knows my pain, she writes. He lost a son too. Then she writes, 15 years later, I still cry at Christmas. That's when I remember his life and my loss. I still cry at Easter. That's when I'm assured I'll see him again. I know I'll never get over it because I don't want to get over it. The intensity is less, but the joy of life takes away the pain of birth. And then she says this, and it blew my mind. I have found salvation through God's Son because of the loss of mine. Wow, only a Christian could write that. That's real, that's raw. But it just shows that even in the worst scenario, God can still be glorified